I'm a big fan. Some strength coaches might disagree for wrestling. I would say an overhead like military press. I think that would be the better of the pressing movements, just because most overrated, I would say probably bench.
Can you give us an insight on that, just a quick one?
I would say from a stabilization standpoint, are amazing for the sport of wrestling. The fact that it's front loaded, you got to sit into a deeper range of motion. It really does mimic the demands of the sport for wrestling. I would say a med ball circuit will be the best, because you give a wrestler a med ball, they're gonna want to throw that thing, they're gonna want to slam it, they're gonna take all their frustration out on that. So when it comes to wrestling, is one of those sports that's all encompassing. You got to be strong, you got to be fast, you got to have endurance. So big thing here is we'll do a heavy strength movement. For example, our guys prepping for U23s, we did Zercher pin squat followed by a box squat. So we'll do a heavy vertical strength movement followed with a vertical plyometric. The reason we do that is...
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to a new episode of the Awareness Podcast. Today, we're here with our guest, with a familiar guest, James Surovcik. Thank you very much for being with us, and introduce yourself to the people.
What's up, guys? My name is James Surovcik. I'm the strength conditioning coach for the Stanford Wrestling team, and thank you guys for having me.
And I'm glad we finally got to do it, man. I'm really looking forward for this one. And brother, right now you're working in Stanford. Everybody knows Stanford is a big program. Then you've also worked at Ohio State. You've also worked at UNC. Sorry, is that? Yeah, NC State. Sorry about that. But then what I wanted to ask you about is, you've worked in these high-level programs with high-level athletes. Just want to know the things that you see in common that they have, that probably you can allocate their success, maybe per se, to those traits that you see and to those habits that you see. What are some of those things that they have in common that make them successful?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the support systems at all three D1 schools that I've been at are amazing for the athletes, whether it be me as a strength coach, sports psychiatrists, trainers, nutritionists, the sport coaches themselves, alumni network, all that kind of stuff. All that stuff really does play a role. I would say at the highest level, all three of those schools finished in the top 10 this year for NCAA wrestling. So you're the best of the best. So I'd say the combination of the support system at each of those universities combined with the culture of all three, of the winning program, you guys, like the guys that come in as recruits, whether you're a returner or a new guy, the expectation is that you're going to perform and you're going to elevate the standard. So I would say it's a mix of understanding the culture that you're stepping into and then having that support network that keeps you going throughout the length of the season. I would say that's kind of the big thing that I've really noticed is that culture really does matter, and that really does play a difference in those programs. That's something that each program that I've been at, they've had a unique, different culture. Not all three were the same, but the culture really lives, and I feel like is kind of like that intangible essence that really helps the athletes grow and elevate themselves. So when it comes to being successful, the culture is the backbone, and the support network that they have is huge. Obviously, they're here to wrestle, but life still goes on, right? So having that support network of where they feel that they're taken care of in all aspects of life and they're supported to where they can go out there and wrestle free, that's kind of our job. So I would say at the highest level, it's all those support systems really trying to perform and own our roles. Me be the best strength coach I can be for them. Our AT be the best AT she can be for our guys, and have that for all aspects of the support system. I would say that is really what separates those top programs, is just everyone's bought in, they're bought in all the time, and they're committed to elevating the standard through their culture.
How would you describe the Stanford culture to get some insights? And who do you think is the person driving the culture the most? Is it like more the staff or the senior athletes?
I would say for our culture, we have a very unique culture. We have a young team. We have a really young, talented team. A lot of homegrown talent, a lot of California West Coast talent. We got a good mix, I'd say. It's tough with Stanford. It's cliche to say, but we really all across the board have guys who set the tone, really. Like our freshman class, sophomore, going all the way up to our senior leaders, coaching staff. We've got such an amazing coaching staff. Our AT knows wrestling like the back of her hand. All our academic advisors involved with the wrestling. Our guys in admin are involved. So here at Stanford, we're pretty blessed to have such a diverse network of culture of where everyone involved with our team eats, sleeps, and breathes it. You know what I mean? So from that perspective, I would say we all are equal contributors because we all just feed off of each other, which is great. In terms of individual roles, I'd say our freshman class and our younger guys, they really step up. A lot of teams, like the younger class, obviously they're still learning the ropes. We had a freshman national champ. We have a lot of young guys. We had a freshman ACC champ. So we got a lot of young talent that have really shown maturity and discipline throughout the year, especially this offseason, and handling the success that we've had, putting that in the rearview mirror and focusing on next year. So when it comes to that, I would say, honestly, our whole team is thankfully bought in, and we're all feeding off of each other. But I really credit our young guys to elevating the standard and hitting the ground running, especially, obviously, I didn't start the season with these guys, but like from end of NCAAs to moving through the offseason, our young guys, they weren't, oh, we're number 6. We just had a great year. They're like, all right, what's next? What do we got today? We're getting ready for tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's great to hear, and especially because I think of myself when I was a freshman, and let's say coming to a team full of seniors, full of people that are, I don't know, 24 years old, and I'm 18, coming here is like you're less likely to, let's say, stand up and be a leader. So it's really nice to hear that the freshmen were the ones actually driving the ball, moving the ball forward. And I wanted to ask you, like, for all the people that are coming to school now, that are becoming freshmen, what are some of the traits, some of the habits that perhaps these freshmen that you had did that make them leaders, that make them stand up and actually be the drivers of the program?
I would say 2 things. Obviously, being coachable, but that goes into different realms. I would say our guys are so understanding of this, or so susceptible to, I guess what the word would be, like, they're just coachable. And it comes down to my system and our coach's system. The perfect example is peaking for conference tournament and NCAA tournament. We sat the guys down, me coming in mid-year. Obviously, that's difficult with a strength coach. And so they were just very coachable in terms of the fact that I explained my system and my vision as a strength coach and how I was going to prepare them to perform at the national stage. And they were extremely bought in. So I would say when it comes to freshmen, taking the right strides in the right direction, right off the rip, it comes from really just trusting your coaches and trusting what they lay out for you. I think that was a big thing for our freshman class, especially in Valencia, who's our national champ winner, is really diving into the program and allowing the coaches and trusting the coaching staff to veer them towards success. Going forward with that, I would say discipline in their training. I tell the guys every rep counts, which obviously it's pretty customary across the board, but it really does matter in times like that when you're trying to peak for a championship month, so to say. So discipline within training, I would say integrity when it comes to finishing every set and rep and hitting the bar speed and pushing your peers and stuff like that. So having the fortitude and the integrity to push yourself each and every day and really try to get better, own your coach's system and understand why they do it. I encourage the guys, especially the freshmen, ask questions on why we're doing stuff. That's something these guys do a great job. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing it? I never take offense to it. Some coaches might. I love when guys ask questions because it shows that they want to learn. And then I always try to put it into wrestling perspective of how is this going to transfer to the mat. So I'll just say be coachable, eager to learn, disciplined with your training, treat every set and rep like it's the last one you're going to do, and just be ready to attack each day. Every day you can get better. You got to make the most of each day. And that's something I really try to stress to our guys is every day really does count because it's a game of inches. And we saw that at the NCAA tournament. It's literally a game of 0.5, 0.1. Yeah. Those minuscule differences really do matter, and they stack up. So if we're going to half-ass in the weight room, then you can expect results that you might not like in March. So I would say those are my big ones for freshmen is just being very coachable, understanding that you got to trust the process and become a part of the system, diligent in your training, have integrity, have discipline, and just be ready to attack.
Definitely, man. Not taking any detail for granted, and then also just being humble enough to know that you still have something to learn. I love it. And James, brother, you're in Stanford, and you've also worked in very high level programs. And now that you're in Stanford, just for us and for everybody watching to get a perspective of what the environment looks like, what is like that support system that you mentioned that maybe is one of the main drivers of the success of these programs? What does the support system look like? What are things that you guys provide to the athletes, just so people have an idea of some of the things that play a role in the success of the program?
Sure. So that's a great question. We have what are called PIT meetings every Tuesday, where every member of our staff, coaching staff, academic advisor, sports psychiatrist, nutritionist, myself, our AT, we all get together. and we go from the top of the roster to the bottom of the roster and all of our individual guys, what they need, any red flags, any green flags, stuff like that, just going through all the updates. We'll all each give our own little spiel based off of what's going on that current week. So I'll usually give a rundown on training week, the days that are high, the days that are low, some things that we're focused on, anything that I might see on force plate data or anything that comes up during a session that might be a red flag. I'll let the coaches know then. I'll just give them a breakdown of if we switch phases, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it's going to affect the team. Basic stuff, just try to give them the bare bones of what we're doing so that way we're all on the same page. And then from the other support system role guys, we have AT. She gives out an injury report on guys A through Z, gives us what's going on, how long until the injury subsides or we move forward with a different process of their recovery or rehab. Then what else we got? Sports psychology, she'll give a speech, usually give an update on some guys. We'll have nutrition, which is a big one. We just got a new nutritionist. We didn't have one during the season, so that's been a new one. And basically, we'll just go through the roster, and we'll give any updates that might be important for the coaching staff to know, and then vice versa. They'll give us stuff that we might need to know on our ends, so that way we can best take care of our guys.
Oh, that's great, man. Just hearing that you guys run through every athlete and you do it through different scopes, right? So you even have the academic advisor into it. So it just like there's no way that you miss something or that you're not on top of your things or not yet that you're not doing what benefits the athlete the most if you're doing these types of things. So it's really nice to hear that, man. And now that we talked about what do the athletes receive there, what's like to be in such a high level program, I wanted to go straight into the wrestling training, right? And I wanted to ask you, you enter the team during the season, and of course during season, wrestling is a sport that has a lot of contact. There's a lot of fatigue impact that the athletes receive. So I imagine you want to be super efficient with the way that you're training. So what are the main things that you're looking for? Like that 80-20 of things that you're looking to train that you're like, so long as we have these things together, I'm good.
So it's a good question. I would say in season, it's going to vary guy to guy based off of where they're at. If we got a guy that needs to cut some weight and is just maintaining where we're at, we'll run different circuits. If it's not a main normal lift that we're running, we'll have guys do circuits that might need to cut a little weight. In terms of, for example, our 174, he's got a little more mass that he could fill. He's got a little more avenues of training that he can go down compared to like our one guy who's kind of capped that he's at. So I would say making sure that they're maintaining their strength, obviously. And then what I'll do is based off the schedule, we'll kind of go week. When it's in season, I don't really program too far out. We'll usually go week by week or bi-weekly, like 2 weeks at a time. Main thing is strength preservation and then strength to power. So how fast can we turn on the light switch? So we'll do a lot of like concentric rate of force development kind of movements, like a pin squat, a pin press. We'll deadlift off blocks. We'll do Zercher pin squat, stuff like that. So a lot of just rate of force development. How fast can we move lightweight or semi-heavyweight? And across basic movement patterns. And then the big thing that I really hone in on is injury mitigation. So we'll do a lot of like ankle preservation, do a lot of knee work, a lot of shoulder work, a lot of hip mobility, really attacking each joint and trying to get it strong and mobile and stable. Those are the that I really focus on. And we saw good results in the back half of the year. Those are the big. I don't really try to overcomplicate it in season. It's pretty basic. We'll pick 3 movements. We'll pair a heavy movement with a plyometric, and that's going to complement the same movement pattern. And we'll basically run that, and then any accessory movements are going to either be something that is going to assist them on the mat in terms of strength, or like elevate one of their weaknesses that they might feel, or that me and the coaching staff feel that they might have, or injury mitigation, stuff like that. So if we have guys that have ankle, have them do some calf raises towards the back, or in the beginning of the lift, have them do some pogo jumps and stuff like that, little hurdle hop series. So kind of tailoring an individual guy, but following the premise of the fact that we want strength movements paired with fast movements. We're hitting all movement patterns. We're prioritizing the posterior chain, and we're taking care of, joints that stress throughout the season and are exposed, like our high injury targets. So
yeah, perfect.
Yeah, those three are probably our biggest thing.
Sounds good, man. And I was gonna ask you another question, but now that you mentioned that you want to prioritize your posterior chain, I want to ask you why. Like, why for wrestling is it so important to prioritize that posterior chain?
So wrestling, obviously, they're going to be pulling a lot more than they're pushing. So obviously, upper back, lats, all that kind of stuff is going to be extremely important. Anytime they're in a tie-up position or they're hand fighting, all that's going to contribute pulling. Anytime they're pulling in a shot, that's obviously all going to use their posterior chain on the upper half. And then the lower half, anytime they shoot off their feet, they change direction, they level change. They're in the stance and they're in their stance for 9 minutes, goes to overtime. All that's going to do wear and tear on your hamstrings and your glutes, your low back. So taking the posterior chain is extremely important, especially in wrestlers who are very quad dominant. Training the just the chain as a whole is extremely beneficial, in my opinion, for kind of balancing in terms of like a comprehensive athlete from the inside. So it really helps complement them as athletes and develop weak points in their body. And then the hamstrings, I mean, anytime it's going to be off of our hamstring. Anytime we pull a penetration step, it's going to be pulling with our hamstring. So those are muscles that a lot of guys, they don't in the mirror, so they don't train it a lot. So those are things that we really try to prioritize. And then when it comes to pulling, like I said before, try to pull twice as much as we push. Any upper body movement or upper body day or block speak is going to start with a pulling movement. I'll never do a press before a pull. And then we'll focus a lot on horizontal, obviously, and vertical. And then I'll try to change the ways in which we load and the ways in which either their grease tax or the tempo or the set and rep scheme. So we'll play around with a lot of different things that combine instability, grip component, or systems within pulling and stuff like that. So we'll do a ton of different stuff when it comes to posterior chain development. A big thing that we prioritize is like on our Fridays, that's kind of like our, we call them fake training. So we'll do sled push, sled pull, heavy med ball, or light med ball behind the back tosses to kind of contrast extension with fast hip extension. So we'll do a lot of posterior chain work because anytime they're returning someone, anytime they're level changing, all that's going to come from the posterior chain, hamstrings all the way up to their neck. So it's extremely important that we train that aspect because it's obviously the most used in wrestling. And then I'll try to do is check all the boxes of how we load it, the planes. We'll try to go through full range of motion. We'll tax them through manual work, sled work, med ball work, all different kinds of things. We're checking the box in all different avenues. And then obviously with the schedule and, our training, so that way, we're doing adaptations. But yeah, pure strength, endurance, speed, power, all that is going to be probably one of our highest priorities of training.
Definitely. So
how do you train the endurance in season? Is it mainly when you do, wrestling when you do one-on-ones?
Like live wrestling?
Live wrestling.
So yeah, they'll get a lot of their conditioning from in season. A lot of their conditioning, I'd say 85 to 90% of it is going to come from wrestling and wrestling hard. That's what I tell the guys. Like, you want to get better conditioning in wrestling, go wrestle hard. Obviously, from a workload management standpoint, that's not always the best. When it in-season conditioning, I would say one of two things is something that we'll probably do. We'll either do slow, steady-state cardio on the bike for 30 to 40 minutes at like a conversational, or we'll do high-intensity, like work to ratio of like a 1 to 5, 1 to 6, and we'll do like 5 to 10 second goes on an assault bike with like a 50 to 60 second work to rest ratio. Do that maybe 8 to 10 rounds. So we'll kind of work our alactic bursts and then more of our like aerobic, like recovery, kind of slow cardio. Those would be the two that I really focus on in season. Off season, obviously, there are a million more options, but how I kind of approach a season is, if this is our gas tank, we're trying to elevate here, the top end, and we're trying to elevate the bottom end. So that's what we're trying to do, is move it this way. Our steady state cardio will allow us to have our floor a little bit higher where we can recover faster. And then we push our VO2 needle forward to where maybe we can sustain 100% for a few seconds longer. And then that floor level allows us to recover a little bit faster. So we'll kind of mess those two in season. And I'll make it for the guy too. If one guy has, in a certain bucket where maybe his ceiling's here, but his floor is here, or a guy's floor is here and his ceiling's here. We'll kind of work the guy individually, and especially you could get into the whole weight class discrepancies with conditioning as well. But yeah, I would say those are kind of my modalities of training for those guys.
Okay, so you want to bring that kind of like that little bit up, but then you also want to expose them to those adaptations so they're able to perform at that high level of intensity, right? That's what the assault bike that you mentioned is very important. I mean, you only do it, I don't know, 10 seconds, but at least you're giving them that exposure, right? Without necessarily giving them so much fatigue.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll make sure that they're well rested before doing another rep.
Yeah.
That would get a high quality, like 5 to 10 second go of where they're going all out, and we can kind of push a little bit further and they're not accumulating too much fatigue. And a big thing that I'm sure you guys as soccer players know, like big fan of low impact cardio here. So very rarely, if ever, will I ever have them go on the track. We'll do stuff this preseason, and that's more of just mental toughness. But 9 to 10, they're either on a skier, they're on a Versa climber, they're on an assault bike, they're on a spin bike.
Yeah.
Or they're doing like high intensity in the wrestling room with jump ropes, med balls, kettlebells, all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
And now you talked about, okay, you want to make sure that you're keeping their strength. You want to make sure that their rate of force development is high, and you want to focus a lot on that posterior chain. Now, how do you do it? Like, what are some of the exercises that you do the most to train that? And what are some of the variables that we're looking for? I know you posted some of the exercises that you like, but I wanted to ask you, like, how does it look like specifically, let's say, in a training session?
Yeah, good question. So posterior chain, the way that I like to program exercises is I try to get the most bang for our buck. So like I posted on Instagram, snatch, grip, deadlift, and Zercher squat. Those are going to be our two purely based off of bang for our buck. Once we do those, and like obviously right now, that's like the time of the year right now is we're building our general strength. So we're doing a lot of bilateral strength movements. As we progress forward, big fan of like single leg hinge movements. So single leg trap bar, single leg RDL, anything unilateral like that is going to be super, super big in terms of a stability standpoint, and then just obviously growing strength. I would say for upper body pulling, we do one rope exercise you may have seen where it's like a horizontal row where we're pulling a rope and my partner is resisting the pull, but they're feeding me slowly. So we're working different wrist angles. We're working our posterior chain through pulling. And then the partner who's feeding the rope is going through eccentric contractions of the lats, and they're feeding the rope while still having to work their grip through pronation and all these different movements. They're squeezing, they're crushing, they're doing all different things. So we're checking multiple boxes with different things. Pull-ups. Right now we're in an eccentric phase, so we're really teaching these guys how to lower and control weight. So we'll learn a lot with tempo. Upper body training like grouping rows and stuff. It's a little bit harder to change, like because like we can't really use as much bands or chains and stuff like that. So we'll mess around a lot with tempo and positioning. So whether it's isometric holds, eccentric lowering, we'll do a lot of cluster sets, which are pretty good. We found a lot of success with that. In terms of an exercise standpoint, yeah, big just things that check boxes. So those ropes, we'll do a lot of unilateral training regardless. So a lot of single arm pulling. We just landmine rows, which are good. So I would, just trying to keep things that check the most boxes when it comes to an exercise. Like what can we get for the most bang for a buck?
Definitely. And you mentioned those two first exercises, which is a snatch, grip, deadlift, and then also the Zercher squat. What about them is so good, and why are you getting the most bang for your buck when you're doing those two exercises? Just because those are exercises that not a lot of people do, and they're losing a lot if they're not doing it. So what are some of the things that you're gaining?
Yeah, so from a Zercher squat perspective, when we're bar, it's front loaded, so we're gonna have to do a lot more to stabilize. Our core is gonna get a lot more engaged. The benefits it has for your upper back and core and your lower back from a standpoint are amazing for the sport of wrestling. The fact that it's front loaded, you got to sit into a deeper range of motion. It really doesn't make the demands of the sport for wrestling. It's going to impose a demand on your forearms, your biceps, your neck to stabilize. It's really an all-encompassing exercise. And And the one reason I really do love it is because it's really hard. It's not an easy movement. And so these guys are put in an uncomfortable position that they've never done. We've got guys that can back squat 500 pounds. Cool. How much can you Zercher squat? It's tough. It puts a lot of demand on your back. You got to brace your core a lot more. So it's just a more taxing, difficult squat pattern that not a lot of people are comfortable doing. And it really does mimic the demands of wrestling.
Yeah.
So that's the reason we use that. What we'll do is we'll run that block A, and then we'll go block B. We'll go snatch, grip, deadlift. Similar thing of got to get our hips lower because our hands are wider. So we got to get set into a deeper position. So that's challenge their mobility, and it's going to get them comfortable in deeper ranges of motion. And then they're going to have to use their upper back. They're going to have to use their traps, and they're going to have to feel like they're bending that bar to get it up. And then hamstrings and their glutes, or they're sitting in deeper knee flexion and hip flexion. They're going to have to go through a longer range of motion with that weight. So it's going to tax their posterior chain even more than just a standard clean grip deadlift. So then before bang for our buck, we're getting more range of motion. We're incorporating more of our lower back, more of our upper back. And again, a different movement than a stereotypical clean grip deadlift. They got to go wider. They got to use muscles they probably haven't used as much. They're in a deeper range of motion. They got to lift the bar more. This point is a little different. So both of those movements are just kind of movements that tax our guys in the ways that we need them to get taxed in ways that they haven't really done before. So the adaptation ceiling is a lot higher than if we were just put a bar on their back or have them do a normal deadlift.
Definitely. And you mentioned as well before that you try to do, strength-based, then you also try to pair it with a plyometric exercise. And then why do you do that? Kind of like, well, like how does it translate to the sport?
Yeah, so obviously it's all about wrestling is one of the sports that's all encompassing. You got to be strong, you got to be fast, you got to have endurance. So the big thing here is we'll do a heavy strength movement. Like for example, our guys prepping for U23s, we did Zercher pin squat followed by a box squat. So we'll do a heavy vertical strength movement followed with a vertical plyometric. The reason we do that is for the post-activation potentiation effect, which basically that summarizes like your nervous is able to produce more explosiveness following a strength movement because it's more primed to express that power and that strength. So we'll pair one strength movement with a plyometric, whether it's, for example, we'll do a pen lay row. We'll pull from the floor, we'll drop it. We'll do that probably 6 by 3, 6 sets of 3 reps. Each set is paired with med ball slams, 5 each, like stepping, bending, wrestling. So strict strength movement paired fast plyo. We'll do trap bar deadlift, broad jump, pin press, med ball chest pass. So we'll try to complement the movement patterns. And the whole point is to, like we talked about ceiling, is raise that ceiling of how fast can they turn that strength on. We developed it, we expressed it fast. Now we're going to drop the load and we're going to go even faster. Okay. So that's really the whole purpose of that, is how fast can they express the power that we're training for.
Also, you mentioned you have like an eccentric, like you divide eccentric and concentric.
Yeah, so we ran an isometric phase first. We ran a 3-week phase. I was in the middle of contract negotiations, so I didn't know what the strength coach after me would do. So we're kind of going lunges here. Hasn't been as clean as I'd like, but we broke it down into like the triphasic method, except switched eccentric to second, mainly because coming off of a long competition season, I didn't want him heading straight into eccentric and doing the muscular damage from that. And I thought for wrestlers specifically, a lot of them just like to go up and down, up and down, up and down, and they train hard and fast. Where if we can get really strong at the deep part of a squat, or really strong above the bar in a pull up, stuff like that, like we can get positionally sound and strong and develop our fundamentals from there, it will lead to better movement quality and strength in the long run. So we did isometric phase first, where we get comfortable in the bottom of a squat, we get comfortable above the bar, we get comfortable with a bar on our chest, barely holding it. And then we move to an eccentric phase. Now that we're positionally strong and we feel more comfortable in positions and at a deep range of motion, now we can slowly lower the bar, slowly lower and like hone in the eccentric component to where now we can start building more muscle.
Okay.
It's very interesting because I never heard it like this before.
And by let's say isometric and eccentric, do you mean that the focus, let's say you adjust the tempo to focus on that phase, or do you just do that phase?
So our isometric phase, we've run the same exercises. So for example, Zercher squat. Let's say I do 5x4. All my sets are going to be 4 reps, and I hold at the bottom for 3 seconds. And then maybe the next week I hold at the bottom for 5 seconds. And then maybe I go back to 3 seconds, but I increase the intensity. So we're manipulating the weight and the tempo to complement each other over the course of time to where they're more comfortable in a deep range of motion, and then they're getting more comfortable with more weight in that deep range of motion. Once they're set in that deep range of motion, then we're able to lower them slowly and develop the eccentric capabilities. And then after they've mastered the bottom, they've mastered the lowering, then we master how do we transfer that into power.
Okay.
So then we'll transition like a banded resistance phase. So we'll go bands and chains, and we'll see how fast can they turn it up. And then we'll go chains to develop more of that strength and accelerating through a full range of motion.
And so and concentric will be, you'll be aiming for the opposite as eccentric and isometric, right? So in eccentric and isometric you want more time, but then in concentric you want less time in that phase, right?
Exactly. Yep. Okay. So the goal here is to develop these two phases, so that way when it comes time for the concentric phase, we're even faster, we're more robust. When we do a pin squat, our velocity is even faster. So we're training to get capabilities that will enhance phases down the line.
Yeah, definitely. And James, brother, now we're coming to the off season, right? We're coming to the summer. So what would be like the training protocol of a wrestler in an off season? What are some of the things that he may be looking at? What are some of the ways that he should train?
Yeah, so right now we train 4 days a week. We'll kind of do 2 body days and 2 lower body days, and we'll alternate them. My advice to off-season wrestler would obviously be, like we said before, prioritizing the posterior chain, mastering basic qualities of movement patterns. So, squat, pull, lunge, carry, rotate, obviously incorporate neck. But I would say the biggest things are mastering basic movements. Learn how to hinge, learn how to get strong on one leg, incorporate rotation, incorporate neck work. The biggest thing I think is really just like I hone in on it every single lift. Follow the tempo and really hone in on every single rep being perfect, because it doesn't matter if you're going up and down in 1 second and you're moving more weight than your partner, but the rep looks like shit. So when it comes to off-season training, having really sound reps and doing basic stuff will take you very far. Like I said, prioritize posterior chain. That's probably number one thing when it comes to like what muscle should I train. That's what I would focus on. From an aspect, right now, like I said, I don't get a lot of conditioning time with them through Kara hours of just like, the NCAA, like following compliance. We're kind of in the same boat of raising the floor and raising the ceiling in terms of what we do. But if I were to give advice to a high school wrestler when it comes to training in the off season, I would say mastering the basics is going to be the biggest thing. And just getting really comfortable doing basic things, getting good at doing basic things. So that way, when you get a D1 strength coach or, you join a collegiate team, you know how to squat perfectly. You know how to hit depth. You know how to deadlift, and you know how to not round your back. You know how to do a perfect pull-up. You know how to bench press. You can do a push-up. You can do something on one leg. You know how to hinge properly and do an RDL. So I'd say those are kind of the you just need to master.
Definitely. It's like it allows you to then, when you go, let's say, to a program like yours, start focusing on loading instead of, okay, let's teach you how to squat. Let's teach you how to do this movement properly, because you already have those fundamentals dialed in. And James, now that we got a good idea of how you train, what are some of the main things that you're looking for, I wanted to ask you, because I think combat sports are a really peculiar sport, especially because of how constrained you are, let's say, with the weight. So I wanted to ask you, you mentioned how strength maintenance and strength, maintaining that strength and developing is very important. But how do you do it when you're constrained with the weight that the athlete can get?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's going to kind of depend on and what we do with each guy. I would say the biggest thing is we kind of do 2 things. Why they're having to do circuit stuff, so that way they're still maintaining strength. And what I'll do is I'll do usually 8-station circuit. So I'll do 4 movements that are pretty ballistic in nature, like a med ball or a band or something like that. And then I'll do 4 that incorporate either a dumbbell, a kettlebell, or barbell or something like that, which is more like slow and controlled, like a dumbbell walking lunge or a goblet squat, something that they can do for time that's still controlled so they can develop a strength quality, but it's still somewhat aerobic. And then we'll pair that with like med ball slams, hip toss. So the circuit ends up being a combination of strength development or maintenance as well as an aerobic component while they're keeping their weight down. They're not going to pack on size. They're not going to not break a sweat. This is going to help them get their heart rate up, still get those strength adaptations that we're looking for of just checking the box and activating what we need to. And then on the flip side, if they don't really need to cut weight, let's say they're right where they need to be and we're a few days out from a match, rather than run through like a full lift, what we'll do is probably push, pull, squat, or push, pull, hinge. One movement, one's heavy movement, one fast movement, and then maybe some accessory work for like a shoulder, a knee, or an ankle, and maybe some isometric holds, and that's really it. Depending on how they're at and what the competition schedule looks like. But when it comes to strength maintenance over a guy who needs weight management, and that's kind of a yellow flag, maybe they'll fall into one of those 2 categories.
Okay, so either they want to go down, so you do some circuit stuff in which you implement some training things, but then that's the same nature of the circuit. It has some aerobic component into it, so they're still going down, they're breaking a sweat. But then let's say if it's somebody that you just need to maintain their right where they want to be, you just expose them to the stimuli. And how many sets and reps are you doing? I imagine like you're keeping the low. Is that right?
Yeah, usually. So like I told you before, we'll prioritize posterior chain. So if we're going to alternate, I'd probably do Zercher squat or like a snatch grip deadlift first. Then we'll do pull-ups. Then we'll do one of the 2 that we didn't do for Zercher or snatch grip third. And then we'll do a pin press fourth. Each 4 of those movements, starting from the top, would probably be 6 sets of 3 reps maybe. I would say no more than 4 reps and then probably 5 to 6 sets. Okay. So they're still getting an adequate amount of volume, but each set is not going to be, they're still expressing it fast. So our Zercher pin squat, I think yesterday we did 6x3. Obviously 6 sets is a lot, but if you're resting, 2 between each set, 3 reps is really not that bad. We can express that. It gives our phosphocreatine system time to rest, replenish, and then boom, we attack the next set. 6 sets of 3 reps, pretty freaking good stimulus from that. So probably what I would have them do is the first 2, where it would be a lower body and an upper body paired, 6x3, and then maybe for my squat lunge, that's going to be fast, and then my pressing movement, do 4x4 or something like that. For press, I think we did 4x4, and we paired it with 4x6 to 8 of a plyo push-up.
Okay.
So we'll axe and add more volume on the first 2 blocks of what I deem are our main 2 blocks that we really need to hit. And then we'll kind of drop and still get adequate compound movements, strength, and speed. But we'll get it off of things that might not be as high priority. But they're still getting what they need and checking all the boxes of the day.
Definitely. And I mean, I want to be even more efficient with the movements and try to get more bang for your buck when you're dealing with these type of people that, okay, we want them to the movements that are going to maximize the strength, but without necessarily bringing them more volume. And James, I mean, another what you guys do is, of course, the weight cut, which is pretty well known in combat sports. So I wanted to ask you, when you have athletes that they're not eating the same amount, let's say, as they were eating in normal conditions, but they still have to train and they still have to develop them as wrestlers, but then also they have to go down in weight. So they're training to be better wrestlers and then also to go down in weight. How do you manage all that training while you're in weight cut?
Yeah, so that's a very difficult aspect of navigate is the weight cut. Thankfully, the guys themselves and the coaching staff are honestly the main 3 pieces of the puzzle when it comes to the weight cutting. I support it in terms of the fact of, like I told you before, of like, do we need to put this guy on a circuit? Do we need to modify this guy's volume, or is this guy free reign? So that's kind of how I deal with weight cutting. I know they do a lot in terms of like water manipulation. I think that is the biggest thing on their end, is like they manipulate far out from a competition, and then they give them like an ounce of like, and kind of like how many ounces they need to each or drink each day so that they're water loading properly and then they can dehydrate properly. Because like when you're cutting weight from an acute standpoint of like, you know, they're really just focusing on losing water. They're obviously not focused on like trimming fat. That's more of like kind of they've had that's worked. Obviously gotten to D1 college wrestling, and then the coaching staff, they kind of do more. When it's helping a guy weight cut, you know, intake and kind of on basis. And if the guys are in certain pound allowance over, like usually if we wrestle on a Saturday, we want to be no more than like 7% over our weight class on Monday. Yeah. So a week out, you don't want to be like, you kind of want to each day. If we've guys that are a little bit higher, I'll take them on the assault bike and we'll do kind of, you know, that's not going to cause a lot of fatigue, especially to CNS. So that's kind of like my role in weight cutting. Yeah. It's not as scientific as like the nutritionists and coaching staff. They kind of deal with that a little more. But as a strength coach, it really just comes to how do I manipulate their time in the training room? And then if they need excess avenues to cut that weight, I help them do it in a safe way.
I find that to be fascinating, man, especially because a lot of people might think, oh, they're losing weight, they're losing fat. But a lot of it is water. I was listening to a podcast of a guy that focuses on, he's a nutritionist mostly for fighters. And he was talking about the meal plan that he gave to a UFC fighter. And he even had like brownies in it. You know, so it was like a 1900 meal plan. But he's like, okay, that's the meal plan for like a 10 plan. But then, of course, as you mentioned, you want to get them to a point that, let's say a week before or 2 weeks before, there's some percentage of the weight that they want to get at. So then you know, okay, and I can start like lowering their weight intake, and then I know I'll be good for 5 days. I don't know. I just find that all that process to be fascinating, man. And then
I wanted to ask, like, when you season, like, how many plays do you have, and do you have to wait in before each competition again?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So depending on the competition and who we're wrestling or what kind of event, like if it's a duel, we'll usually 13 guys, maybe only 10 are going to wrestle. We'll have a few reserves in case, you know, he's kind of a smarter guys, maybe 50-50 on if he's going to wrestle or not. For an tournament, like where anyone can wrestle, it's going to be pretty different. And then I would say when it comes to like picking the guy in terms of like who's going, it's kind of up to the staff, you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. And brother, I mean, you run us through like how everything works in terms of the training of a wrestler, of a actually, like it applies to a lot of combat sports, all the way from what are the things that make the big programs actually big. You mentioned that point on culture and everybody being aligned on the same page, even though cultures might be different, but then they have a defined culture, which I think is very important, what you mentioned. And then what are the main things that you're looking for when strength training, when conditioning a wrestler, a combat athlete? And I think that point that you mentioned on how important the posterior chain is, and then always trying to get the bang for your buck, the biggest bang for your buck, which I believe, yeah, man, what's going?
It's getting hot. It's getting hot in here. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. And then how you mentioned how important it is to be very efficient with the exercises that you're picking, because of course, considering that the amount of time that you can get them is pretty limited. So you want to make sure that you're being very efficient, and you just gave a lot of actionable advice that young athletes can and young wrestlers can take. So yeah, man, I appreciate that. Matt, say anything else before the rapid fire?
No, for me, just wrestling or combat sports is such an interesting topic. Because when Camille told me I'm going to do a second podcast, and I just watched Strickland against my fight. It's amazing. Like you said, it's endurance, speed, and strength. To know or get to know how you guys train, I think it's very nice to see, to get like the insights.
I was looking at some wrestling highlights before the podcast just to get. It's just insane to see like so physical, but then so technical as well.
Oh yeah.
It's an art in some way though, so it's a very interesting sport. So, brother, are you okay? We go through some rapid fire questions.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay, what is the most overrated exercise you see wrestlers doing?
Most overrated? I would say probably bench.
Can you give us an insight on that? Just a quick one.
I mean, it's good for building general strength, but I feel like a lot of guys, like, that's the thing they do. It's like, I need to get bigger, I need to get stronger. I'm training to get, you know, I'm in wrestling training. I need to get in shape. I need to get strong. Let me throw on plates on bench and get my bench up. Like, I think there's a lot more things that you could do that are going to benefit your wrestling performance than doing a bench. the stereotypical bro lift. Like I want to bench 315 and I want to have the most bench in of my boys. So I would say that's kind of an overlooked or overdone exercise.
You could swap one exercise in for the bench. Which one would you choose?
If I could swap one?
Yeah.
Some strength coaches might disagree for wrestling. I would say an overhead like military press. I think would be the better of the pressing movements just because they're here so much. So if you can really hone in, like I'll have our guys do is they'll do eccentric on the way down. Let's say we do 5 reps. The last rep they're gonna hold for 10 seconds above their head. So they get really, really comfortable in like an overhead or just like an overhead of holding the bar above their head. I think extremely good for shoulder stability. And it's gonna
for mobility, right? Because like
exactly
crazy about mobility.
Yeah. So I from a pressing standpoint, like a strict press or even like a push with those holds above is really, really good.
Just to flip it around, what is the most underrated exercise wrestlers should do or are doing?
I would say Zercher squat for sure.
Yeah, might have to start doing Zercher squat before after. Brother, and with a little bit about it, but like, what's your go-to weight cut exercise that you do when the guys, okay, we need to get down a little bit? What would you do?
I would say med ball circuit will be the best because you give a wrestler a med ball, they're gonna want to throw that thing, they're gonna want to slam it, they're gonna take all their frustration out on that. So when it comes to like an intent for trying to get their heart rate high, getting sweating, you give them a med ball circuit, they're gonna execute it pretty well, and it's gonna accomplish what you need as a coach.
Great.
Would you rather have the absolute strongest guy on the mat or the absolute best conditioned guy on the mat?
Best conditioned for.
Okay. Yeah. Why?
When you say that, because we're kind of in that predicament right now. We got a lot of strong guys, but we got a lot of guys that could really work on their conditioning. So that's going to be something we really hone in on in the off season is our conditioning. I think that who cares if you're strong, because if you can't make it to the 3rd round, then it doesn't really matter. So I think both are equally important, but a lot of guys are strong and a lot of guys aren't as conditioned as they could be. So like we talked before in a game of inches, I think we can make up more ground being really elitely conditioned, if that's a word, like making our as best as possible. So I would use probably the most conditioned athlete.
Great. Brother, ice bath or sauna for recovery?
Sauna for sure.
Yeah, why?
For sauna, we've got a few saunas here. I think in terms of ice bath, from a training perspective, I've always been taught that, because I won't act like I know all the science behind it, but like something, the restriction it puts on your muscle, like when a muscle goes through hypertrophy, I was told that like ice baths prohibit that, a limit. Good for acute soreness, but to rely on an ice bath, I don't think it's the best option. I think a sauna is going to do more for, soreness and stuff like that. I would advise against ice baths and choose sauna.
Perfect.
Okay. What is the most common mistake freshmen make in the weight room in their first semester?
I would say probably focusing on things that they see in the mirror. So doing a lot of curls, doing a lot of benching, worrying more aesthetics than they are about functional strength. The wrestling that are going to make you a national champion, a lot of them are not pretty, and they're not that fun to do. Some of them are boring and mundane, but they support your body to perform on the mat. So I would say a lot of freshman wrestlers, that might be their kind of pitfall, is they're used to training for beach muscles and stuff like that. They're not used to training to be a national champ. So getting them out of that frame of mind of I need to look good in the mirror to identify if my training is working or not. So just kind of getting to the plane of we're training for performance and not aesthetic.
Yeah, that's like a lot of exercises you named, like there's sort of like the one exercise that you with partners, training all the angles. And
Yeah.
if you watch it, I don't know much about wrestling, but when I see videos, like if I were in a wrestling match, I would probably my arm would snatch in the first round because I don't have the mobility for it.
Brother, and to finish it off, a lot of good insight, a lot of actionable things to do, but if we could finish it off with one piece of advice for young athletes, man, which one would it be?
It's a good question. I would say good advice that I give our guys, and honestly advice that I live by, is like our Stanford family of the wrestling team, like we live the training and the team environment we have, it's a lifestyle. So I would say young advice, if you're trying to be a college athlete, like you've got to be willing to make training your lifestyle, because it's not what we do in the weight room. It doesn't really matter if you only do the 60 minutes in here and the other 23 hours you don't care about. So I would say if you are committed to being the best version of yourself and being a college athlete, you need to commit to a lifestyle of pursuing excellence in all avenues. You need to be dialed in your nutrition. You need to turn your phone off before bed and get some sleep. You need to make sure you're eating breakfast. You need to make sure you're hydrating. You need to make sure you're stretching. You need to make sure that you're taking care of your mental clarity. You need to remove relationships that are not positive for you. You need to, training outside of wrestling, do things outside of your sport, have an identity outside of wrestling and training. Like you need to hone in all aspects of your life and make it a lifestyle commitment in order to be successful. You can't just show up to the weight room, lift, and go to the wrestling room and wrestle, and that's your 3 hours of training a day, and then the other 21, you're just a normal Joe. You're not a normal Joe if you're at Stanford, so you got to be committed to a lifestyle of training.
I love it, man. I love it. And I always remember this phrase that actually a guest from a podcast told us, which is you can do 100% in everything. And that's where everything that you just mentioned comes through. Like you can do 100% in recovery. You can do 100% in nutrition. People think that giving your 100% is just going to the gym and smashing the weights. It's actually like focusing on all those little details and not taking any of those things for granted. So I really love that piece of advice, man. And I think it talks to me and it talks to a lot of people. And you just got it. You just send the right message to all the people. So again, brother, I truly appreciate you just being willing to hop in. I'm really glad that we finally got the chance to speak, because I really enjoy when we have these conversations. So again, man, just looking forward to have another conversation like this sometime in the future.